let's get started. So Ryan Kushner is known as the Accelerator Guy. Ryan has been involved in leading or starting many climate accelerators and has even written a book about them called Accelerate This, which I just finished reading a couple days ago. It's a fantastic book for anyone who wants to help founders. And the interview with Ryan will focus on his leadership of Third Derivative, which is a global climate tech acceleration ecosystem. Ryan, tell us a bit about the conception of third derivative. How did you get from the stage of somebody must do something to the stage where you knew what shape it should take and were ready to pitch partners and funders?
It was so I was working for the California Clean Energy Fund slash New Energy Nexus here in Oakland, California. And that's where the book came from. And we used that kind of as like a marketing tool. So we could get clients to approach us because that's what we're doing as a nonprofit. We're setting up climate tech accelerators all over the world. And uh, just at the same time, internally, Rocky Mountain Institute, which had been around for 42 years, is like 700 people all around the globe, all very smart, sort of techno-economic modeling folks. Uh, Practices in lots of areas at RMI, but they didn't have anything that worked directly with innovation, directly with innovators. It was a lot of sort of like government consulting and corporate consulting, modeling, white papers, that kind of stuff. And so they identified it internally at RMI as kind of like part of like a missing tooth in their full suite of solutions as a large NGO. And so they really approached us. They said, Ryan, you wrote the book. New Energy Nexus, you guys, this is what you do is you set up accelerators. So is there a world in which we can collaborate and make this? And so that's how it started, was sort of just like an email from them. And uh, right away, this, obviously was my project. Because this was sort of like my function. I wrote the book, and I was sort of like the create programs and set them off to sea kind of a thing. And so we started sketching out the program on the back of a napkin, and it was a great project. Not to go too far afield of the question, but it was a great project because RMI said, make a great program. What does the world need? It wasn't, we have these corporate partners and XYZ, and they want to, it was just make the best program possible. And having, you know, done my MBA here in San Francisco, was in an accelerator. I created accelerators. I've been all around the world. It was a great opportunity to have like a blue sky, blank page approach to like just make an awesome program. I'll stop there for a moment.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that third derivative is largely focused on the early stage. What were some of the other choices that you decided at this stage that it has to be focused in this way?
Um, uh, just so I understand the question, it's sort of like what did we say no to? What were the choices that we made?
Yeah, kind of. So I'm trying to understand how did you decide to create a program with this particular scope as opposed to a different type of accelerator?
Right. Um, the largest failure rate happens in early stage innovation, and what we identified specifically is the gap in hard technology and specifically under innovated areas, right? And so if you uh, like more mature sectors, wind, solar batteries, like you can imagine, like that's a deployment challenge, that's a financing challenge. Um, but to take all of the world's steel production or all the world's cement production and make that clean, which is a large part of the climate emissions wedge, that's a challenge. And we identified that there specifically was a lack of support in that area, and not just like um, innovation, but structures to support the innovation, right? So the whole uh, concept of the derivative was, let's put the ecosystem in a room. And so let's get the corporates that want to buy the products and services along with the the financiers who are venture capitalists pretty much exclusively, along with the innovators, and have everyone sort of row in the same direction. We'll do the job of finding great companies, pulling them together, um, having everyone speak the same language, vetting, and and listening to the corporate partners and understand what are their needs and how can we help sort of fill that, in addition to the other sort of activities they do in this field as like a CVC or just as in an innovation organization. And so it was like effectively what really needs to be done, what is under innovated. And so that's why I focused on um, carbon capture, steel, cement, petrochemicals, building technologies, and sort of all the other sectors. It was like, and also just being humble, like where could we add value as experts in the field, understanding um, the sort of like long-term climate trends, understanding business and where the gaps are and where can we help in that. Um, and so that was the scope of the program.
Yeah.
So no SaaS kind of stuff, it was like the easy stuff. It was like, let that happen. That's growing fine. It doesn't need a tailwind. Does
Mhm.
that
Thank
make
you.
sense?
And when it comes to getting these initial partners, what were some of the important factors that caused them to come on board? Like, what was in it for them?
A lot of this, like the theory of this is sort of like, is it in the book? I'm glad you enjoyed that, Eugene. The subtitle is it's Accelerate This, a super not boring guide to climate tech innovation. And so it's visual, it's easy. You don't have to read it sequentially or anything like that. It's written for people like me that don't read books. Um, and so the theory is any corporation that gets involved with an accelerator either wants to buy the products and services. They want to see like sort of what's coming out of the pipe, what's interesting, what's new, what are they potentially missing. They want to invest, or they just maybe have some money in a CSR bucket and they just sort of like want to splash it around and sort of just goodwill value. What was important for us as starting out as their derivative, um, RMI has a great reputation. They already had a lot of corporate partners. It was pretty easy to get like our first, call it like 4 or 5 companies. So we like, just through our existing relationship with Microsoft, they said, sure, we'll give this a go. You guys, you don't have a reputation as their derivative, but we understand that RMI does. We'll take a chance. And so it was kind of spending some social capital.
Mhm.
And then once we had, I think like Microsoft, FedEx, um, maybe BP, uh, then it was easy to say you're going to miss out and sort of sell the FOMO of it. And relationships is basically is the thing at the end of the day. It's all about relationships and trust and trying to make good on a promise,
Yeah.
basically.
Thank you. That makes sense. So that covers how you
Mhm.
worked with your partners. How about your work with your founders? So how did you work with your founders to make sure that what you're doing for them actually does what you think it does for them? Um, was there anything in terms of the way you operated with founders that turned out to work much better or much worse than you thought it would?
Yeah. So this is an area I'm very passionate about. As mentioned, I did my MBA. I had an idea for a business. I pitched it. I was in an accelerator. I applied to a lot of accelerators, and I know that it sucks. Like applying is a lot of time, and from sort of like a larger sort of ecosystem point of view, you're sort of like taking energy out of the system. Hopefully, as a program, you're adding to it, but in a way, there is a potentially like a lot of negative externalities. And so, I write about this in the book in a chapter called Serving the Rejected, which is sort of like if you're planning a program, you're trying to be somewhat socially responsible, just again like zoom out for a second, understand the total sort of hours spent on application and what you're doing, what you're getting back for that, and what you're giving to a select number. And we knew it would be selective, we have about 5% acceptance rate. And so that's just so many entrepreneurs effectively potentially wasting their time. And so we built in right from the beginning, giving people notes, giving them honest feedback around where maybe we as a program couldn't serve them. Oh, we don't operate in agriculture. Here are some programs that do. Or being really honest with founders of like, we need to see more traction. We need to see more people, or we're not seeing the level of sophistication or whatever it is, just sort of like being honest. So even if you spent 5 hours on an application and you didn't get into the program, at least you could get some feedback. And we invite everyone to reapply. And so one of my favorite stories is um, um, a company that applied that I knew personally through another sort of startup competition. They applied 3 times, got rejected 3 times, and on the fourth time, they finally got in because they had just matured, and we had told them to keep on applying. And then they got into like 2 tracks that are doing super well. It's Electric Fish, in case you want to check them out. And to me, that's what it's about, is about having not like a one and done approach, but having a relationship with the founders as well. So um, acknowledging the ecosystem, having a focus on people that don't get into the program. And then for the people that do get into the program, uh, again, being very aware that uh, every company is different. Everyone's really busy. As an entrepreneur, you don't need to like have more meetings on your schedule. Like that's not incredibly helpful. What you need is sort of um, uh, help as you need it in ways that you know, in ways that you don't know. And so we created the curriculum to be bespoke. And so our model was just to have monthly meetings with the founders where we ask them what are their problems, what are they dealing with, and then we help them clear out the blockers. In addition to other sort of invitational, optional, meet the founder of this and webinars and things like that. And the curriculum per se is a large collection of curriculum that I gathered or wrote that we completely open source. Like everyone should have access to educational materials, I believe. I don't think educational models should be predicated on making people pay for learning. So that's all free, and then we help our founders sort of ad hoc and bespoke, and that's worked out really well. People love not having to have a dog and pony show that they need to show up in for, and they just want to do work and get to work and figure out how their business can be better, far faster, smarter. And that's what we want from a change model as a program and as a nonprofit. People care about climate. We just want these companies to grow as reasonably fast as they can so they can succeed and solve problems. Um, things, let me think for a second. We have like happy hours and things like that. We try to like make it social. People just kind of wanted to do work, and but the social thing that people wanted were around conferences. They're like, have a party, invite us, invite like have like things that we're already going to, or sort of like seminal events, like get us together in person. That's really meaningful.
Yeah, thank you. And now let's talk about what it means to operate third derivative. So what were some of the most important kind of day-to-day activities of operating an accelerator like this? And which of them is it most important and hardest to get right? Where like if you get that wrong, it's over for your accelerator,
Mhm.
not great impact, while others, there's more leeway.
Um, I, you need to have your financial book in order as an accelerator. And so the hardest thing is to have a donor base or a corporate base or whoever's paying for your program pay it in a sustainable way. So as the vicissitudes of the market come and go and companies come and go and staff of the companies come and go, you can um, continue to build your program over the long term to create a reputation and have stability. And so honestly, that's just the hardest thing for accelerators is figuring out who's going to pay for your services. Um, Second to that, having great applicants and being able to vet them assiduously and um, and that because you sort of live and die by your reputation as a program of bringing great companies. If you don't do that, you're not. It's hard to fake it much longer. That's ostensibly what your partners are paying for is a point of view and uh, a sense of sort of standards. And so those are the top two things. Make sure you can run your organization and then get great companies. After that, a lot of it kind of takes care of itself.
Very cool. So sound like a lot of the activities that you really need to focus on have to do with fundraising and
Yeah.
with essentially recruiting and vetting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And like uh just so I can understand like maybe like super briefly the audience here, like am I talking to people that want to start accelerators, be in accelerators?
Mhm. Yeah, so Ryan, you're talking to the Work on Climate board team and advisors. So we are talking about this through the lens of what can we learn from you as an ecosystem builder who wants to mobilize talent to build companies, among other things. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. So on that front, I have one more question for you, Ryan, which I think is particularly relevant to this. So given everything you know, what kinds of change or what scales of change is it possible to create via a model like third derivative, and what kinds of change require just a fundamentally different approach?
um, I'm not sure I can answer that question. Ask me a bit, give me a little bit more flourish on that question.
So if we consider, the entire set of reasons why we don't quite have the necessary climate innovation at the necessary scales and deployments, there is a niche for third derivative, and third
Mhm.
derivative could grow in that niche. It could, pivot a little bit and, occupy a slightly different niche. But there are probably also areas where an accelerator model is simply you can't create that kind of change with an accelerator. So what would be those niches? What can you and can you not
Yeah,
do?
like what can't an accelerator do in this space? Well, first of all, I think collaboration is great. If there was a desire to play along with their derivative or do anything that's like more of an ecosystem
Mhm,
effort and more collaborative, I think is better.
mhm,
Um, um,
mhm.
Let me think about this for a second.
So Ryan, just to make
I
sure I
think
understand
the
here.
ecosystems can't. Yeah, just quickly. Uh, Ecosystems are money takers, not makers. It's a terrible business. Um, and there's a few and only a few examples of accelerators that make money. And so I would look at it as a loss leader. Um, and so it can't solve a financing problem because it can't even finance itself, but it can do a lot in terms of bringing great minds together.
So basically, if anyone has any questions, just um, feel free to jump in. I do have one to start, though, Ryan. So RMI is based in Boulder, but the third derivative program was set up really to be a virtual program. And as I think
Mhm.
about other, kind of, accelerators, Y Combinator, Techstars, they
Mhm.
tend to be, or incubators, they tend to be place-based. So I'm just
Mhm.
wondering, there's obviously a decision to be virtual, and how have you kind of managed like being virtual versus kind of what you lose from not being place-based, and then kind of how
Mhm.
you try to build some of that back in different ways?
Mhm. Um, the because we're doing hard tech, like you don't get a lot of like three computer geniuses with a bright idea can knock out a thing in a few months. And so they don't know shit about marketing or product or anything. But if you brought them together and really just made them sweat for a few months and like did that whole thing, then you could launch something and see how it goes. Like that's basically the model of Y Combinator, and they've done well by it, right? The model of Techstars is that it's a corporate funded accelerator, and they work with more mature companies. That's like more akin to sort of what we do. And for that, because they have like a paying customer, like they need to do more dog and pony show. Um, for us, like it's It's a global market. It's a global problem, global solutions. And so it didn't make any sense to uh, uh, like kind of like waste people's time, have them pick up and move their family and break their flow of going to the office. We just want to help people do what they're doing already, faster, better, smarter. And so um, that was sort of always the model, which is accelerate people in place and then have, we started think we thought about having like a demo day like once a year, get everyone together, and then COVID happened. So we said that's not going to happen. And that was kind of a saving grace because it's really not necessary for us. We just do a lot of constant communication with our communities of corporates and VCs and sort of outside interests. And then we do these shoulder events on, besides like during conferences, before conferences, things like that. So it was strategic because we wanted to build a very large program. We have 260 startups in the program right now. Um, we had an internal goal of like hitting 500 startups, just sort of doing the math of assuming a certain failure rate, call it 1 in 10, and what it takes to decarbonize the sectors that we're interested in. Like we needed to have, of course, quality, but quantity. We needed sacrificial um, planning effectively. And so to get those kind of numbers, like you just need to make it really easy. And there's more and more accelerators, and so it's competitive. And so we structured the derivative as a no regret solution. So like you don't have to go anywhere. The program doesn't cost you anything. And I didn't mention this in the other section, but you don't need to, we offer like a small like 100K check, which you do not need to take if you want to be in the program. Like we as a program don't care, like because we're not trying to get on your balance sheet, we're just trying to help you. And so that was, it was like, oh, when you put it that way, like, oh, I don't have to, this is just a totally free program. And so wait a second, Ryan, if all I want to do is just like talk to Microsoft, I just apply, then you have like no stake in my company. I'm like, that's right. Like use us. And so that gave uh, us the broadest choice of companies we could work with because it was hard to say no to a sweet free offering.
Yeah. The other thing that really struck me from your comments earlier was like the concept of serving the people who didn't get in.
Mhm.
And I will say, as someone who actually did apply to third derivative,
Oh, right.
I really, really appreciated the feedback
Oh, cool.
I got
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the
that's awesome.
process,
Yeah.
which is, very, very different from, a lot of other places where you're applying to pitch or whatever. So I really appreciated that. But what are the different ways that you thought of, or how deep did you go into that kind of concept of serving the people who didn't get in? Because it's a very, it addresses inclusivity, right, for a model otherwise that's exclusive, right? Because we're only going to pick the top 5% or et cetera,
And
right?
exclusive and extractive of the whole ecosystem, right? Like all those people that are spending time doing that rather than sleeping or whatever it is or working on their business. So constantly thinking about that. Always in the back of my mind, I was like, what can we do to be more helpful and less extractive, especially for the 95% of people that waste time on our application because they don't get in. And so I didn't mention this either, but I think it's worth talking about is when I was at New Energy Nexus, same problem. And so I took a page, when I was actually working on the book, I interviewed Kat Manilak at Y Combinator. And like the whole book is like, how do you do what you do? What are your like secrets? Um, and she said that one of the most helpful things that they did was start Hacker News very early on of Y Combinator. And it gave them this stickiness, which was incredible, right? And so like the way it works is that you go to apply to Y Combinator, which I did and didn't get in because it's harder to get in Y Combinator than Harvard, literally, statistically, 2.5% acceptance rate. And so you go to apply and they say, thanks for applying to Y Combinator. join Hacker News. This is where all of our announcements are and stuff like that. And I remember thinking like, oh, that is so annoying. I have to do this whole thing. But it has them have what's the order of magnitude? They take 2.5%. Everyone else they reject is like part of this network. And so they have this incredible mind share. And so we started something like that for climate, which is the New Energy Network, which is like a big Slack group. I don't think it's the perfect thing, but it's a thing that grew to like 6,000 people and organizations. And so at the beginning of the funnel, you apply and you're put into community, right? And so it's not just us in there, it's us in like every program. It's totally open. So, you apply to their derivative, but you learn about other things or find a co-founder. Like, so you're put in community. So already that's a win because we're forcing aggregation uh, of the applicant pool and not just ours amongst just climate tech broadly, ideally. It's sort of like it's a companion, let's call it, to y'all's Slack group. And so that was like first thing. Second thing was feedback. Third thing is continual invitation to keep applying. And uh, that's kind of the best we came up with, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then sorry, then the free resources, which I just posted. So like the curriculum's open.
I don't want to monopolize the questions. Does anyone have something that they want to jump in with? Otherwise, I can continue.
I did have a question. Hi Ryan.
All right.
So I'm on
And if you could
advisor
introduce
as well.
yourself, Laura. Sorry.
You can hear me?
Oh,
No,
yeah,
no,
no,
good for you.
we're good. We're good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Um, so I'm advisor for work on climate and was in the US government doing big transactions in energy, transport, and stuff like this in Africa and Latin America. And I know from meeting the MD, getting his name for derivative, but he talked a little bit about
Bob.
the challenge. Yes, talked a little bit about the challenge of getting more investment and kind of innovation in areas of the world like the African continent and Latin America. How much are you looking at that, and what are kind of some of the unique challenges that you're facing in those areas?
Well, the double-sided marketplace of like the innovators and the corporates or the deployment organizations, we take applications from anywhere and we try to have a like, sort of equity in, equity out model. So all of the diversity, geographic diversity, economic diversity, that's all on the who we try to get to apply. And then it's a meritocracy. But to that, we're always trying to deepen relationships with networks and universities and get applicants from as many countries as possible. That was always interesting and fun and productive for us. And in terms of the deployment side, that goes slower, right? And so we're just now 4 and change years in, rolling out our first sort of like geographic focus. Well, that's with a paid partner to Southeast Asia with HSBC, right? So like they really want to do that. Um, it's you need someone committed multi-year on the ground, and there needs to be like an actual reason to do it because um, people can find out, the internet's everywhere, you can find out things, but if there is like what am I trying to say? Like a fundamental reason why a country, it's like Latin America, you're like, that's 10, so many different countries and ways to deploy energy and economic markets. And so it's just local. And so
Hmm.
a way to deploy locally in a market that's being overlooked or someone wants to penny up for some reason to um, try to have more innovation or more deployment there. And so you need a paying partner and someone that's on the ground and can like pay for it and then bring people in and then socialize with their business units, like things like that. When I worked on the free electrons utility accelerator, that this was very international from the Middle East to Ireland to um, to North America, South America. It was all international electrical utilities who had like uh, a stake in bringing innovation to their utility because they were going to buy those services, invest in those companies. And so I think that's the way to do it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I might follow up with you and probe a little bit more because I know this is an
Hmm.
area there is interest from funders and they're just kind of I don't know what to do or where to go or where to begin. So
Yeah, feel free to. Yeah, kind of a big topic. I feel like I just covered surface, surfacey.
yeah, yeah, anybody else, Mehrad or Imbal?
Yeah, I don't mind just quickly chiming in. Also, advisor work on climate. I do
Cool.
stuff with Cool Climate Collective or the Stage of Messing. But a question I had for you from Third Derivative and all the companies you're bringing in, like that's one metric, the number of companies and supporting. But from a broader thinking, climate tech being adopted and actually like doing the impact we want to do, what are bottlenecks you see in terms of post the program and just post program support? What are bottlenecks that companies face um, for that adoption, whether it's domestic but also that emerging markets global perspective that you see?
You name it. You know, like you probably like that's like anything can be a barrier. Um, Internally, your team, your finances, technical, like external, the environment, funny environment, political environment. So it's hard to even say. It's just the life of an entrepreneur is just constantly dealing with shifting sands. But
Do
like,
you see anything?
was there more to that,
Yeah,
Murad?
do you see maybe from the let's say let's look at historical like the failure rate, the ones that have failed. Has it mostly been internal, or has there been something external, like
Oh, yeah,
market
yeah,
adoption rates or something like
totally.
that?
The person that has studied this the most is Bill Gross. And right, his whole thing, it's timing. Is like um, I'll send you this talk, but he looked at all of the companies from Idea Lab that he had created or invested in, and there's really no pattern. It's just kind of like timing, being in the right place at the right time. Um, so anyone thinks that they're a genius, you can remind them that too, that they're lucky. Um, and so Google that. Tell me if you can't find that. He has one talk which just really lays this out very specifically. And so timing, but I think just to dig a little bit deeper is like to have timing, you need to have a product and service that is somewhat malleable and you need to be alive. And so you need to stay alive longer to find your product market fit. And so latitude to make mistakes and the financing to do so and like sort of finding your lane.
No, thanks. I've heard his talk on that, but that's
Okay,
for
cool. Yeah.
now. Just do
Yeah.
climate. Yeah, yeah.
Totally. I'll never forget that. I think he's awesome.
Um, Orion, I have a question. Hi, we've met. My name is Inbal. I'm the director of programs at Work on
Yes,
Climate.
we have it.
Um, I am curious, one, if with all of the like political and economic changes that are happening, if you're seeing one, are you seeing founders reacting differently? And two, creating um are you creating space for that at Third Derivative in whatever way, through learnings, through community building, through I don't know what.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there was a lot of like, what does this mean? Like big like RMI webinars that really for the whole RMI community, and we invite our founders to be in there. So understanding that, calming people's nerves, um, and yeah, just being able to contextualize it, um, and like really emphasize like this is like a federal change. Um, a lot of companies work in specific states on state regulation, and that's most likely going to shake out fine, depending on like larger budget issues and things like that. Like, but yeah, trying to contextualize and just calms people's nerves, um, and maybe prepare for like a little bit of like a long winter. It's already been a long winter financially since um, SVB crashed, and so it's been just like a terrible time to raise money for a long time, and this makes it worse. So I don't know. It's tough times financially.
Go back to kind of new energy, the new energy network, right? The kind of right along Slack community that you have for D3. And I'm just wondering how much time and effort does kind of D3 put into managing and kind of maintaining that community?
It's ebbed and flowed. When I was there and started, I was there like all the time, and then I had additional staff person. And then when I jumped full time to third derivative, it kind of got a little bit left. And it's uh not a ton of time, basically. It like would it make sense to just basically merge that with yours? Totally. Like I would do that in a second, effectively. Is basically like announce a successful run for No Energy Nexus and just because the whole idea is to aggregate, and you guys are way more organized and have way more attention and um just time and hands and hearts on your community than New Energy Nexus does. Just for my cursory analysis of just looking at it once in a while. So minimal. And you guys do a better job.
What do you think about, can you think about any like particular program areas kind of with, like, let's say that there were a merger, right? But there are any program areas that could then like feed back into kind of third derivative for, like, I'm just going to brainstorm like, the founder, almost like the pre-founder training or a pre-accelerator, kind of business 101 type of thing so that people have stronger applications.
Yes, that's a great idea. That's really helpful. If you're sort of asking like what is like, what's the most like active area on New Energy Network or what could be helped more, I'm not sure I could.
Yeah, or what's the piece of that that's most useful to third derivative?
Um, it's our hacker news, so maintaining mind shares, having a channel to put people that will not get into the program this time, but we can get them in future times effectively.
Right.
And then,
Awesome.
like we're gonna be at, ARPA E, if we have a big public event, it's like a channel
Right.
effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
Communications and
Right.
keeping people engaged.
Exactly.
Awesome.